Welcome back, everybody, to the PGA DFS Pick Show. I am your host, John McNutt. You can find me on socials at JohnCool19 here for Fantasy Sports Insight, talking DraftKings PGA DFS. This week is the U.S. Open, the third major of the year. So let's go ahead and jump right in. As far as a course preview goes, I'll throw at you a bit of information if you are looking for it. There are a ton of very in-depth course previews out there on YouTube. Check those out. But as far as a brief overview and a focus on the stats that I'm looking at this week, the course is Pinehurst number 2. This is in North Carolina. The course is just a par 70, but it's 7,400 plus yards. Very, very long course. Bermuda grass greens, and this is a Donald Ross design. So a couple things to note. This is going to be an extremely difficult course. I would expect that only a handful of golfers, if that, finish 4 rounds under par total. So look at the winner maybe in the single digits, 2, 3, 4 under par. It is possible somebody could get really hot and do a little better than that, but I do not expect very low scoring this week at all. The cut will be the top 60 and ties, and you can expect the cut to probably be something like +2, maybe +3, could even be more hectic than that. Not a lot to note weather-wise, except that it has been extremely dry in the area. The greens are going to be very fast, very firm, and it's not about long, thick rough like a lot of U.S. Opens, but instead this course is much more difficult in its length, as well as the greens themselves. I mentioned they are fast, they are firm, they are also kind of plateaued, if you will, like turtle shell like. The ball is going to hit and roll off constantly. So we're going to put a focus this week on ball striking as we usually do, but also around the greens. Very, very important. Ton of missed greens this week. As far as the rough goes, again, they're pretty wide fairways. The rough is very, very thin. There's not much rough to speak of, and it turns right into kind of a sand trap fescue type area. So certainly you want to have accurate drives, and with the length, you need long drives too. So I'm going with total driving as an important stat this week. I also looked at par 4 scoring, and specifically on long, hard par 4s, like 450 yards plus. Since there has not been very many events played at this course, we certainly don't want to be focusing on things like course history, and the stats are limited for past events here, but instead really focusing on difficult par 4 scoring that is going to be consistent throughout all the years they've played here. Just to mention that this course did host the U.S. Open in 1999, 2005, and 2014. So very limited course history, but certainly something worth looking at. It's hosted some U.S. amateurs as well as a few other professional events. But other stats I'm focusing on here would be bogey avoidance. Again, very, very difficult course. Scrambling, since we are going to see a ton of golfers missing some fairways, but then mostly missing greens. And then as far as proximity goes, again, we're probably needing some long iron players. So 175 plus yards on proximity is kind of where I would be focusing on. And then I mentioned the greens are Bermuda grass greens, so certainly Bermuda putting, and really on fast Bermuda courses. There's some videos coming out right now. The ball is not going to stick on these greens at all. We do not expect any rain in the forecast either, so it could be absolute chaos as far as trying to get your ball to stop on the green this week. I really enjoy courses like this, similar to last week. Very, very difficult. Tons and tons of bogeys. It's about who can hold on and make a bunch of pars, not who can make a bunch of birdies. So interesting for me. And let's go ahead and jump into my favorite golfers for DraftKings DFS. Starting at the top here, and really no surprise, Scotty Scheffler is my favorite golfer this week. I played him in almost every single lineup last week, and it paid off. Absolutely going to do the same thing again. He is only 13,000 on DraftKings. That's 200 cheaper than he was at for the PGA Championship. He's also at lower odds to win. He was 4-1 going into that week, and he is just 3-1 odds to win here this week. I'm probably going to play him in just about every single lineup again. The form is just insane right now. He's finished outside the top 10 just once since August of last year. He won 5 out of the last 8 events he has played in, and he also has a couple runner-up and an 8th place during that span. His last 10 majors, 8th place, win, 23rd, 3rd, 2nd, 10th, 21st, 2nd, win, and 8th. Crushes in the majors. He's been crushing lately. I will not stop playing him. And then if you want to talk stats, I mean, he's going to be at the top of almost any stat category you're looking at right now outside of putting. But he's number one in my model on long courses, number one on hard courses, number one scoring in majors, ball striking, and also avoiding bogeys on difficult courses. So a lot to like with Scotty. Let's go ahead and jump into another favorite golfer of mine, and that is Viktor Hovland. He is 9,800 on DraftKings, 20-1 outright to win. The form, it's coming around. He struggled a bit to start 2024. I know he won the Tour Championship last year and then took a long layoff, really kind of struggled early this season. But his last few events, 24th, 3rd, and 15th. So I think the form is really kind of there. He was within a shot of the lead here last week through about 60 holes. And then he fell apart. He went and had a bit of a bogey streak on Sunday, but he was absolutely in contention midway through the day on Sunday. I expect him to be able to do the same this week here at Pinehurst. As far as majors go, he's got 2 missed cuts, but 4 top 10s over his last 10 majors. The irons are really what has been picking up lately for him. They are very hot. And as far as other stats go, he is in my model, ranks 4th on hard courses, ranks 7th ball striking. He's 2nd on Donald Ross courses, something interesting to look at, and 10th total driving, and then 2nd on those difficult par 4s that I mentioned. So I will absolutely be pairing Scotty and Hovland in a few lineups this week. I think if you were to fade Scotty Scheffler, there's other interesting options there, like a Rory or maybe even dropping down to start with somebody like Viktor Hovland could be really interesting. And Xander also, I'm interested in him. I don't know want to make sure you saw the news today. Jon Rahm did withdraw. So at least one less golfer in the very top end of the DK pricing. Do not play Jon Rahm this week. The injury we kind of knew about going in. We were chatting about it in our Discord. And obviously he says he can't go now. So sorry to hear that Jon Rahm can't play. We will hopefully see him in another month at the Open Championship. Let's jump over to some value plays. Obviously, if you want to play Scotty Scheffler, if you want to pair him with Viktor Hovland, you need some cheaper golfers to be able to fit everything in. I'm going to start with Sungjae Im. He is somebody that I touted in our Discord last week. Super happy with the performance. He was very low owned. He was really cheap last week as well. And the price got better on DraftKings this week than it was last week. So he's dropped all the way to 7,100. He's 100-1 outright to win this week. I don't think Sungjae is going to win. I don't know if he has a major win in him unless it's at the Masters. But I think he's got a good performance in him here this week. The form has been coming around again, sort of like Viktor Hovland. He went through a poor spell earlier this season, but he is top 12 in 4 of his last 5 events. He was 8th place last week at the Memorial. He had a triple bogey on the very first hole of the week and then played his way all the way back into a top 10 finish. So really, he had a great weekend. As far as major history, it isn't great for Sungjae. If you look at just the logs of his majors, you'll be a little bit underwhelmed, I would say. But he's had a lot of success at Augusta National, and that's one of the best comp courses, I would say, here for Pinehurst. There's also a few others that are not played every year, maybe like Shinnecock Hills. But as far as an every single year course, not much better than Murfield Village that we saw last week and Augusta National. And then, so those 2 courses, really, he's played well on both of those. He has 3 top 20s, including a runner-up finish and an 8th place, both of those at Augusta National. He's really excellent around the greens last week and a couple weeks before that as well, gaining, I think he's averaging almost 4 strokes gained around the green in those 2 events. He ranks 3rd in my model for scrambling, 10th avoiding bogey on the hard courses, and he is 23rd ranked around the greens. So certainly at this price, you're not taking a huge risk, and I think there's a lot of upside there for Sungjae Im as well. And one more golfer that's a great value, I think he'll be very popular on DraftKings. At 6,900, that's Russell Henley. He is 80-1 outright. You can see just comparing these 2 golfers, Russell Henley a few hundred cheaper and much better odds to win. I think that will sort of push the ownership up on Russell here. His last few majors, he has 3 all three of them top 40 finishes. I'm sorry, in three of his last four finishes, those were top 40 finishes, and that does include 14th at last year's U.S. Open. He ranks third in this field on those Donald Ross designed courses. And I think, again, I mentioned he might be mispriced a little bit, maybe by $300, $400, $500 on DraftKings. He should be a bit more expensive than this 6,900. And in my model, he ranks number one around the greens, 13th on approach, 18th avoiding bogeys on hard courses. I really like Russell Henley. I think he's a great option as your kind of your cheap guy in a cash lineup to make everything else fit really well. You can play him in GPPs too. I expect the ownership to be up. So if you were to start your your lineups with Scotty Scheffler and Russell Henley and maybe even somebody like Victor Hovland, three popular plays, you'd want to get a little bit different elsewhere. You don't want to play all of the chalky guys. So here are a couple guys that I am showing as lower projected ownerships that certainly have a very good chance. Starting off with Shane Lowry. I'm not sure why, but on Fantasy National, he's listed at about a 5% projected ownership. I expect it to be a little bit more than that. But for a guy with his pedigree, he's 7,700. He ranks 18th overall in my model. But I think as far as that percentage goes, it probably has a lot to do with the golfers around him in the pricing. For just a couple hundred more, you can play Hideki Matsuyama, and a lot of people will, and certainly I'm going to be one of them. Ty Hatton as well as Thagala also will be very high owned right around him in the pricing. But as far as stats go, he ranks he ranks he's been sixth and 43rd in at this year's majors. So sixth place a few weeks ago at the PGA Championship, 43rd back at the Masters, and he has two top tens at U.S. Opens in his history, and he's also made the cut in each of the last 5 years. So a lot to like as far as his kind of history goes at majors. He's in good form as well. He played well last week. I think he had a really bad Sunday to wrap things up. But the approach game is really, really good for Shane Lowry. If he can get the irons going, he certainly gives him a chance. One more golfer I will mention here, and that is Adam Svensson. He is very cheap, 5,900 on DraftKings, 300 to 1 outright. I'm certainly not thinking Adam Svensson wins this week. But as far as kind of the pricing and the ownership goes, I have him ranked 51st overall in my model, but he is 85th in the pricing. Fantasy National projects him at just 2% ownership. I think he's a great, your prototypical sleeper as far as pricing and ownership goes. He ranks in the top third in this field on approach, scrambling, around the greens, putting, and ball striking. So I think he kind of has the game certainly to make the cut and maybe give you a top 40 finish. If you played him as your cheapest guy in a lineup, it would absolutely help you to get your Scotty Schefflers and some of your other favorite golfers with this very low pricing. So that is going to do it for this week. I certainly appreciate you watching. If you want to get more information from me and from Fantasy Sports Insight, join us on our Discord. The best way to do that is to go to our Twitter page at FSI_DFS. Also at our webpage, fsidfs.com. There's a link to get to our Discord from there. In the Discord, you will get core plays each Wednesday, as well as kind of a breakdown of the weather. I do ownership projections in there, and then also post a player pool for anyone doing big GPP on the kind of 20 max or bigger than that. So I hope you join me in the Discord, and certainly good luck this week. I hope you find the green. Good luck.